and it's like, oh, he's not that bad. No, he's that bad.
He's that bad. And the only reason that he stops on going on like that rampage is when his second is basically said, hey, if we keep doing this, we're gonna get blowback, or someone's gonna hit us before we hit them. Kind of thing. It's just like, this isn't good for business.
Just like the Hutts.
Just like the Hutts.
Everything's Star Wars. Hi, this is Randall here with No Market Media.
And I'm Matt. Today, Randall and I are reviewing a film that came out in 2021. Taking a look at Wrath of Man. It stars Jason Statham, Holt McCallany, Josh Hartnett, Jeffrey Donovan, and Scott Eastwood. It is co-written and directed by Guy Ritchie, who's also known for a few movies we've already done reviews for, including Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch, and The Gentleman. This is Ritchie's fourth directorial collaboration with Statham. Now, before we go any further, if you like this review, be sure to give us that thumbs up. Also, be sure to hit subscribe and ring that bell to get notifications on our latest videos.
And I'd like to say, go watch The Gentleman. I can't tell people enough to go watch that movie. Anyways, Wrath of Man finds our main character H on a warpath to take revenge against those that are responsible for the death of his son. Things only get more dangerous for him and the killers the closer he gets. Had about a $40 million budget and about a $104 million box office. Had very mixed reviews from critics, but is very well liked by audiences. This film cites a 2004 French film called Cash Truck as its inspiration. And as Matt had said previously, this was a 2021 film that I wanted to watch, and I was really excited because Jason Statham and Guy Ritchie are back together again. So, Matt, let's do it.
All right, Randall. I'm going to put this movie in the okay category, and this is why. I absolutely hated the beginning of this movie. I didn't really like the opening scene. I hated the dialogue at the beginning of this movie, but as the movie went along and things started to come into focus and kind of like the action stuff ramped up, that's where I actually got into the movie and started to enjoy it. So that brings me from like not liking this movie to saying, you know what, this movie's okay.
All right, so as an action film, there's a lot of good stuff. This is a good action film, which we'll get into more when we talk about genre stuff. But as a plot-driven film, which with really good and fun characters to watch, like I was kind of hoping for, it leaves a little bit to be desired, honestly. So, like you said, it's kind of just it's in the middle. It's not really threading that needle very well. It's okay, but lots of good action, very well directed.
I think there's some things in this movie that does so well, and then other things this movie does really bad in. But I think, we can talk about this more when we talk about genre and stuff. The people who like the stuff that this movie's good at probably doesn't care about the things that this movie is bad. So that's probably why it has such high reviews from audiences.
That's probably true. But that's not trying to be offensive or anything. Just like, if those are the features of a film that you really care about, the rest of the stuff doesn't matter.
Yep.
All right, so for the plot, it's a pretty much by-the-book revenge flick, except for the way the plot's told isn't by the book. And that, for me, is the problem. I'm not as concerned with, the plot, even though it's very thin. It's a revenge movie. The plot's never that big in a revenge movie. But because this one tries to go out of its way to be a little bit twisty-turny and telling a vantage point,
yes,
of we're going to tell it from this perspective and this perspective. I'm like, you're just padding the runtime. It would have benefited, I think, from a much more linear telling of just being a normal revenge story.
Yep. So that's part of the thing, too. This movie has one of those things where it's like we jump back and forth a lot from, the present to, the past to reveal different things. Where, we start off with this movie with, the heist or whatever, the first one that, people die in, this deadly heist. And then, we jump to the present, which has our main character, H, applying for this job and stuff. We don't get to learn like his motivations or anything, or that he has something else going on until like later, until we get these like flashbacks or whatever you want to say to like catch us up to thing. And so for me, when we're just like we're getting introduced to our characters and like the other people, the cast struck stuff, it's that dialogue that completely falls flat for me. I swear, I'll talk a little bit more when we get into characters, but really that structure is really what hurt, for me. It's not when until we find out what our characters, motivations are and stuff that I really got interested in this movie.
They're trying to like nail that aliens dialogue with their locker room scene. Like, oh, she's a tough cookie woman, oh, aren't you in the wrong locker room? Like, no, God, that was pretty lame.
This movie does have quite a few of those, and we were talking about too when our review on like Doom and stuff, how we have like our introduction. I say like, dude, it's a worse version of the Predator scene. It's the same thing with this movie, I think too.
The thing I was pointing out before about like how I think this plot would have worked as just a straightforward linear plot instead of being artistic. The movie's plot is broken into 4 separate sections, and it all is based around this one event of the main character's son getting murdered.
Yep.
Basically, that is the part, for me, that lets it down. This movie, the plot definitely could have been just played straight as, Jason Statham's character shows up. You don't know anything about him.
Yep.
It wouldn't have changed anything if you had seen his part first.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, he pulls up with his son, and then there's a heist, and then he gets killed, and he tries to, like, putting everything in this weird, wacky, out-of-order way didn't benefit the plot at all. So it wasn't necessary to the movie.
I think, too, at the beginning, I was a bit confused on what actually was happening in this movie. Because we do have that jump in back and forth, and we're learning the motivations and stuff. And there's, like, certain characters that recognize Jason Statham's character.
Later.
And I'm like, but even at the beginning. And they don't explain why until, like, a little bit later. Like, like the detective and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, even, like, his own crew or whatever that was jacking the truck, and they realize, oh, no, that's the boss. We got to back off kind of thing or whatever. Or, it's part of it.
Way to blow his cover, guys.
So, this is the thing that was interesting. I was like, okay, I actually rewound the movie because I could do that. I didn't see it in the theaters live. So, I actually rewound the movie. I'm like, I must have missed something. I really must have missed something.
Nope.
And when I rewatched it, I didn't miss anything. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think if it was a little bit more linear, it would have helped me with the experience, too. Instead of just like, oh, well, you just got to wait another 20 minutes to figure out what's going on.
Exactly. But why?
Yeah.
It didn't help the story.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, if you're not helping the story, you're hurting it, basically.
You are.
So.
Yep. I agree. All right, Randall. I'm just going to go out and say this. The characters really didn't do anything for me in this movie. Like, really none of them. I think the closest we got might be Statham's character. But even to me, I think he's pretty straightforward. I wouldn't say he's, like, really dynamic or really even hiding who he is, even though, the movie's kind of like, oh, yeah, people don't know who I am. They're thinking I'm just this security guard, though he wasn't fooling anybody. I don't know.
He wasn't fooling anybody in the audience.
For me, like, the characters aren't really all that great. I should say villains. Everyone's bad in this movie. Like, bad guys, I would say, for the most part. And the people who are good guys are, like, so disposable in this movie. So, yeah, for me, the characters didn't really work out.
Glad you talked about the disposableness. My problem is not necessarily the characters, because again, revenge plot doesn't have to be crazy, but we're introduced to way too many characters, especially early on. It's like, oh, there's that person and this person. They all got nicknames for each other, and they all, oh, and that one's cool, and then, but they all end up being completely disposable.
Yes.
And you're just like, okay, so we were introduced to this batch of people, and this batch of people, and this batch of people, and at the end of the movie, something like 80% of them are probably dead, and not like dead in some heroic, I did something fantastic and great way, just literally disposed of.
Yep.
Like, wow, that was really worthless.
Well, and another thing with this movie trying to do a little bit of that misdirection and stuff, we don't really realize that he's looking into his like coworkers for a possible like mole or whatever, or inside guy, until very late in the movie. So it doesn't really build, like, I think it would have worked better, like we said before, it was linear, that we knew he was looking into something.
To build
that
tension.
Way, yeah, it builds tension for us, like, hey, is this the guy? Is this the guy? No, we think he's just an a-hole to everyone that's there, and we have no reason to know why he's an a-hole to all these people.
Yeah, I guess. And his looking into everyone was such, I don't know how to say, poorly done, I guess. You know, you only have one scene with the female character, which was completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
Didn't really drive the plot forward at all.
No.
So, and then like, then we have to move on to the last like act of the film, and it's like, he's literally sitting in the truck with the inside man. How convenient.
Yeah.
Who he didn't figure out was the inside man. He just gets told. He's like, oh, I gotta tell you something, man. I like you. I'm helping my guys out to jack everything. So he didn't figure it out, so all of it was pointless.
Yeah.
So all these characters were pointless.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of it goes down. I think, like I said, I think a lot of it might actually be like the story and maybe the writing a little bit. Especially with these characters, like some of their dialogue, as I mentioned before, is like bad. When we have like our little like locker room scene with them, hated the dialogue in there where we're getting to know them. I also don't like when we're introduced to like our commando, robbers, thieves, or whatever. Like that whole dialogue, like, oh, in this war, blah 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 blah. It's another one of those scenes that I think is trying to copycat or trying to replicate something else and just doesn't work out. The dialogue just falls completely flat for me.
Yeah, and I guess maybe Guy Ritchie's a British guy, and he's writing about American soldiers who have been left out in the cold by the government, basically. And he's like, well, what can we do about it? And it's like, well, we're highly trained. Let's go jack a cash truck, basically, or do these jobs where we can get, money. It's like, we can do that, and it's like, well, yeah, I can understand, but I don't think you're really hitting that, like, American note.
No. Well, another thing too, I think these are like two different ideas that we have in like one movie. Because a lot of times we have like movies that just focus on like the revenge, part of it, or like Statham. Or we have other ones where it is like the, people that have sacrificed their lives, for their country and stuff, and have been left out in the cold, and so they're motivated to do like these crimes and stuff. Normally those are like separate movies, but we kind of have this in like one movie.
Yeah, together.
But I don't think we do a good enough job really explaining either one until like, late in the film kind of thing.
And they spent all that time padding everything with all the different vantage point stuff going on. They could have fleshed out some of the characters better, made it more tension filled, made the hunt for like the inside person a little bit more tension filled, and we didn't get that, unfortunately. These characters just fall flat. Statham's kind of fun to watch, though.
Statham is kind of fun to watch, though.
We'll talk that. So, it's an action movie. Welcome to that. It's a Jason Statham action movie, and it's as an action film, it's fun to watch. I mean, if you're like you said, if you're just that's what you covet in a movie, congratulations. You just watched the next John Wick.
It is a revenge flick, and we don't have any dogs dying. At least not that I noticed in this movie.
There's no dogs dying.
Yeah, I totally agree. Action, and then I would say probably like heist and like we talked, revenge flick. So those three parts, I think this movie does real well. Like all the things like, Randall talked about some of the stuff we didn't like about the movie, but yeah, this part is actually good. Action, I think we get like two like good action scenes. One's the first time Statham like goes off when he's getting like robbed, and he's thinking, well, maybe I'm trying to catch the people that killed my son. He just goes off.
That's
like,
when Post Malone shows up.
Yeah, that was a good scene. And then of course we have like our climax, the end, where we have like the heist and like the shootout and everything with the heist. Like all of that is good, and that's really what elevated the movie up for me. All these things I didn't like, and then this stuff I liked, and it hits the genre pretty good.
Yeah, that last scene is to me, I just kept thinking to myself, well, this is like they just put all of the heist scenes from Heat into one scene. Like they break into the bank, and then there's the good shootout between them, and then there's a chase kind of to find him, and like okay, now we're getting into just copycat territory. But it was filmed really well. Jason Statham does really well. Scott Eastwood did a very good job.
Yep.
So like as the kind of bad guy, there's more than one bad guy.
Yeah.
Like it's an entertaining action movie, but am I gonna go visit again?
So this is something that we harp on in our reviews a lot: showing and not telling. I think the beginning of this movie, people are talking way too much. They're doing too much telling. Like, I don't care about their dialogue. They're talking all the time at the beginning of this movie, other than Statham. But Statham hardly ever really talks all that much in the movies. In any movie. But the part where they're actually doing stuff and the dialogue is more purposeful for what's happening at that point, that's where this movie does a lot better and is a lot more enjoyable.
It does a good job, even though it's an action flick, where Statham's kind of like his part of the story is getting told, which is like the third act of this. Not the third act of the film, but like the third part, because it's broken into 4 parts, where you see what happened from his perspective and the warpath that he goes on. And he barely talks, but he doesn't have to. Because you're showing us, not telling us. Just how far he's willing to go. That part was good. And lots of action in that.
Alright, I know. Broken record. It's how bad the dialogue was in this movie. I'm sorry. I mean, granted, this is what we're talking about. If you're into action films, a lot of times you don't even care about the dialogue. But that's the thing, too. I didn't either, and that was the problem. Why do we have so much of this dialogue at the beginning of the film when none of it matters? Like, why? Like, I mean, people just talk and stuff in this movie.
Come on, Dave. It's his first day.
What? He needs to hear this.
Don't engage. He'll forget what he said in a moment.
The other thing I didn't like about it, and going on with that, I didn't see coming, was I feel like even the actors were kind of like disinterested in what they were saying and everything too. Like, I saw some of Josh like Hartnett's, like his acting the first time he gets robbed and stuff. It's just not, it's not great or whatever. I don't know if that was a direction thing or didn't feel genuine at all. None of it. So yeah, the beginning of the movie kind of like throwaway. I didn't really see that coming.
So what I didn't see coming, and I'm okay with this. This was one of those good moments of, oh yeah, that's an interesting, different way of doing it. I thought for sure, okay, Jason Statham's character, he's like a lone, like ex-SAS, ex-Special Forces or something like that. He's from England, and they say, oh, you worked with a security firm for however many years, even though that's all fake.
Yep.
As it turns out, no, he's actually an underworld crime boss.
Yes.
And he's proficient and he's ruthless. I didn't see that coming. I thought for sure, as generic of an action/revenge film as this was, that's like, oh, he's gonna be ex-Special Forces. That's always what these guys are. And it wasn't that. It was, no, this guy's just, he himself is a bad person. So I was happy for that. I'm happy that was different. It's like, you're not really necessarily rooting for him, but you do want him to like get his revenge, because like it's not his fault that his son died.
Yep.
It's not anything he did. It's just bad luck.
That's what I was getting at, kind of my point at the beginning, where it's like everyone in here is like kind of like bad, but some are kind of like more bad, I guess. And that's one of the things I think the movie did well. Like the bad guys were the people that Statham's going after. I do enjoy every time that they're getting hunt down or taking each other out or whatever it is. Like, even though Statham is a bad guy, kind of thing in this movie, I still do root for him to succeed in this movie. So yeah, that I think does work out.
And they throw a little bone in like these scenes where it's like, give the money to the girls and let's go.
Yeah.
I can't do a Jason Statham. I'm sorry. Give the money to the girls.
How old are the girls? Too young.
Too young. Not old enough or whatever.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, he's not that bad. No, he's that bad.
He's that bad. And the only reason that he stops on going on like that rampage is when his second is basically said, hey, if we keep doing this, we're going to get blowback or someone's going to hit us before we hit them. Kind of thing. It's just like, yeah, this isn't good for business.
Just like the Hutts.
Just like the Hutts.
Everything's Star Wars. So now it's my turn to be the broken record. I just wish the storytelling was more straightforward in this. I think that the movie would have benefited by not being split up the way it was, actually. I think we could have definitely built better characters that way, more tension that way, where the audience knows, but these other characters don't know, which works a lot when the audience knows, basically. Because that helps us feel tension. It's like, the other characters don't need to feel it as long as we do.
You're right.
So, but on that trend, if it wasn't, just an action film you're looking for, good to watch.
I think you really got to get past the first part of this movie to really get into it. I mean, that for me is how it was. It just took me too long to actually get, invested or interested in anything into the movie. But once I did, it was fun. It was, enjoyable. I wouldn't say it's like great, good, kind of thing, but it was enjoyable. It plays its role as a movie like, hey, I want a little bit of escape, enjoyment watching it. And that, I think it succeeded after you get over that first part, which really, if we weren't reviewing this, I'm like, I don't know if I can make through this.
If you want to watch a good guy Ritchie film that talks about gangsters and has a whole bunch of back and forth and has interesting characters and a slight itty bitty bit of a revenge plot, go watch The Gentleman.
Go watch The Gentleman.
I'm not kidding. Like, if you liked this, you'll like The Gentleman, but it's better. But we want to know what you guys think. Did you get a chance to watch Wrath of Man? What did you think? Let us know down in the comments below. We also have other movie reviews, some flashback movie reviews, which just basically counts as because it was out almost a year ago, some TV series reviews, and some deeper dive discussions.
We also have a Facebook page. Be sure to check us out there. We post some things from our fandoms. We also post a day before our videos come out to let you know the topic of the next video. If you don't have Facebook, don't worry about it. Just follow us on YouTube page. We have new videos that come out every Monday and Thursday. For now, I'm Matt with No Market Media. Have a good day, everyone.
And I'm Randall. I'll see everyone next time.
Next time on No Market Media. Please consider checking out some of our other videos.